But before we get to the details of the letter, make sure that you take a second to subscribe so we can show the world how many people are on God's side. Now let's get back to it. I have a question for you. Do you know about the Gospel of Nicodemus? This Gospel is very important and it contains many ideas that influenced the Middle Ages. It's also known as the Acts of Pilate and it has two parts. The first part explains the Passion of Jesus. The first part also contains the different testimonies that were said for and against Jesus, which the governor was hearing. After hearing all the testimonies and listening to the demands of Jesus, he finally ordered to execute Jesus. After the resurrection, Pilate came to know that Jesus was still alive. He even gets evidence for this. The second part of the Gospel is an appendix. This is framed as a conversation between two characters. It's believed that these two characters were brought back from the dead during the time of Jesus' resurrection. These two characters explain the things that happened in hell and how Jesus helped the people there. But do you think we can trust this gospel blindly? No evidence or proof makes us believe that this book is authentic. However, if you're a person who values faith more than science, then you can indeed go ahead and trust this gospel. This book was written 300 years after the resurrection of Jesus. This gospel contains very important details about Pilate and many other things. The conversion of Pilate to Christianity is also mentioned in this gospel, but these are not supported in the Bible and no reference of this gospel can be found anywhere in any ancient Christian text. Many medieval ideas were influenced by this gospel and thus it was an important text in that time. When we read this book, we can find it saying that Jesus went to hell by breaking its gate and rescuing the people who were captivated there. We cannot say that this gospel is an official source for studying history. It's believed that Jesus met Pilate. When we take a look at the Bible, we can see that Pilate did not want to execute Jesus. But what we always heard about Pilate is that he was a cruel man and didn't care about anyone. It seems to be wrong now. Jesus was taken to the governor's headquarters after he was arrested. When Pilate ordered the execution of Jesus, it was said that some opposed it and said that we cannot execute anyone since it's not lawful to take anyone's life. Now, when we dig a little deeper, we can understand that Jesus was not the victim of fate. The Jews said that Jesus claimed that he was the Messiah and the opposite of King Caesar. After hearing all this, Pilate went directly to Jesus and asked whether he was the Messiah of the Jews. The religious leaders took Jesus to Pilate, hoping that Pilate wouldn't do anything harsh to him. But as I've already said, Pilate was a man who lacked empathy for others and was very cruel. And as we all know, Pilate's wife was the granddaughter of Caesar, and because of that, he had no difficulties getting to the position of the procurator of Judea. Many scholars have written about Pilate as a cruel and unsympathetic leader. Have you ever seen insecure and weak people getting angry easily? Yes, right? Here, Pilate was also a weak and insecure man. He showed his anger and treated people more violently to hide his insecurities and weaknesses. There were no concrete accusations against Jesus, so they ordered them to handle Jesus however they wanted. So eventually the leaders found a reason to accuse Jesus. They said that he was misleading and turning the nation into something worse. They said Jesus also refused to pay the tributes to Caesar. The religious leaders wanted Jesus dead. They have put so many people to death by the stoning method. The history of that is almost endless. It's believed that they suggested crucifying Jesus to break a curse that's mentioned in Deuteronomy 21, 22, and 23. Pilate wanted to give the curse to Herod by punishing Jesus since he was from Galilee. But what's more interesting is that Herod sent back Jesus to Pilate after all this. This is what we read in the second appearance. Pilate has faced many people saying that are kings, and so he expected Jesus to be a rebellious and strong man with no empathy. But he was shocked when he saw Jesus. Jesus was a calm man with no anger. He was very kind and conscious about his surroundings. Pilate thought that the religious leaders would not have punished him seeing nothing. There must be a reason. But seeing Jesus with his own eyes and thinking about the offenses that he was accused of does not simply match. That is when Pilate got more curious and wanted to investigate the matter. Jesus was a gifted man. He's given the ability of sight to the people who can't see and did some miraculous things that we find hard to believe even now. It's believed that he fought demons and brought back people from the dead. Now you know why I said it was unbelievable. He has many listeners since his teachings were so powerful and valuable. Jesus was sent to earth to serve the people. Jesus answered the question of Pilate. He said that this world is not his kingdom and his kingdom is another realm. How do we know the strength of a kingdom? By looking at their armies? Many of us do this way. Now when we look at this viewpoint, Rome had a well-maintained army, but Jesus had no armies yet. He thought his kingdom was more powerful than Rome. When talking with the religious leaders, Pilate said that Jesus has not committed any crime against anyone or against the state. Jesus is not guilty of anything. The innocence of Jesus was finally acknowledged by Pilate. The people were against the opinion of letting Jesus go. To please the people, Pilate asked to beat Jesus. Even though Pilate knew that Jesus was innocent, he gave him a severe punishment just to please the people and the religious leaders. What Jesus went through at that moment is terrible. The scene is described in the Gospel of Matthew. In that, it is said that the armies bowed in front of Jesus mockingly and spat on him without showing any kindness. This was all done after stripping down the clothes of Jesus. How cruel is that? Pilate tried to release Jesus in many ways. He even tried 5 times. But unfortunately nothing worked and our Lord had to face some brutal punishments from the religious leaders and people. Those people tried to degrade Jesus in whatever manner that they could. But now it's our turn to change that by praising and worshipping Jesus. When the people saw him wearing the crown of thorns, they shouted to crucify him. After hearing this, Pilate asked them to crucify Jesus however they wanted. Pilate was not able to crucify Jesus since he found no reason for a capital punishment. At first, I told you that Pilate is considered a cruel man, but after hearing this story, what do you think about him, guys? Did he have any way to help Jesus? Pilate thought that he could save Jesus by degrading him, but this was not a clever move. This just intensified the issue and ignited the fire even more. The religious leaders were the true villains here. The people might have had some sympathy if the religious leaders showed some kindness, but the people just followed the religious leaders blindly. When Jesus told Pilate that he was the Son of God, Pilate became more afraid. After enduring all the pain that the people gave Jesus, Pilate saw something in him that was very pure. He might be saying the truth that he is the Son of God. At that time, people did believe that God sent his people to earth in the form of humans. Pilate became afraid, thinking that he might be one among them. Pilate has never seen a man like him before in his entire life. Even though Pilate had full freedom and power to release Jesus, he went on with what the crowd and the religious leaders wanted. Do you think that Pilate is the one who made all the judgments during the trial? What if I tell you that it's not correct, and it was Jesus who was judging Pilate? Yeah, you heard me right. Would you think Pilate passed the test? Indeed not, guys. Pilate unfortunately went on with what the people wanted and did nothing that was on his mind. Without evidence or proof, he sent Jesus to death. Now, when we take a look at the Roman traditions, we can see that Jesus carried his own cross with him to the site where he was supposed to be crucified. Roman wanted to get attention, so they forced Jesus to carry his cross by beating him and giving him more and more pain. Archaeologists have found evidence of a crucifixion of someone which dates back to the Jesus era. It was just like how Jesus was crucified. Pilate was a man who punished several people without conducting a proper trial. By hearing all of this, he was called back to Rome. Finally, he was tried there and punished. Jesus was a strong man. He suffered all this humiliation and torture. He died hanging on the cross. The text also explains the climate there during the time of Jesus' death. It is said that there was darkness all over the land. It was a noon time and the sun was at the highest point as well. But there was deep darkness, and this lasted until the evening. It's also believed that this was caused due to the God's intervention. It was like a night time and the stars were also visible. If you made it all the way to this part in the video, you may qualify for our members area, so you might want to listen closely. It's an exclusive